They packed her bag before she even knew what was happening. Didn't let her defend herself. Didn't let her ask why. Just pointed at the gate and wiped her name off the roster like she was nothing. Like 6 years of service meant less than a signature on paper. And the men who signed that paper thought they were safe. Thought she was just another face in formation. Clean boots, quiet voice, someone who'd disappear without a fight. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the woman they just expelled wasn't training to be in their world. She was already operating in another one entirely. A sealed detachment, a classified assignment, orders that existed above their rank and outside their chain of command. And 3 hours after they kicked her out, a Navy SEAL Blackhawk dropped through the cloud cover and landed on their parade ground. Right there, in front of everyone. Now you might be wondering what happened when that bird touched down, what the base commander said when he realized who she actually was. But before we get to that moment, the one that froze every instructor on that deck, let me take you back to where it started, to the morning fog, to the accusations, to the moment Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn stood in front of her entire unit and heard words that would have destroyed anyone else. This isn't a story about getting kicked out. It's about walking back in on a bird no one saw coming. Mist hung low over West Ridge Naval Training Center that morning. Not thick enough to ground operations, just present, clinging to the chain link, softening the edges of buildings that had stood there for decades. The kind of gray that never really burned off. It just lingered. Gulls circled the rusted antenna towers, their cries sharp and distant. The steel cables on the flagpole clanged in rhythm, steady, metallic, like a heartbeat no one asked for. A recruit stood in 2 rows on the parade ground. Navy, Marines, a few cross rates, boots squared, shoulders tight. This wasn't unusual. Once a week, they lined up for performance evaluations, inspection scores, maybe an admin notice that carried weight. It was always quiet before announcements. The kind of quiet you didn't break unless you wanted everyone remembering your name for the wrong reasons. Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn stood at the far end of the second row. She wasn't the type who joked during PT or whispered during rifle maintenance, but she was sharp, uncomfortably so. While others memorized routine, Kira dissected it. 6 years fleet side, convoy operations, detachment security, Bahrain logistics under live fire. This cross-rate into naval special operations support wasn't a novelty for her. It was tactical repositioning. She didn't want a trident. She wanted to work behind the ones who did, make sure their systems didn't collapse when it mattered. Her uniform was precise, boots unscuffed, name tape tight. A faint scar curved along her wrist. Blast fragment from 4 years back. Fully healed, but it still drew whispers. She's too sharp for her own good. Caught 2 inventory errors last week. Reported them straight to command. Doesn't understand how things work here. Chief Victor Kane didn't hide his opinion. Called her a clipboard ninja. Said she thought like a lawyer and moved like a spy. Others nodded along, safer that way. Kira stood still, eyes forward. But even she noticed the shift today. Not the fog, the tension. Something was misaligned. Corporal Dylan Mercer, a junior admin barely out of initial training, walked past with a clipboard. His eyes caught hers for half a second. He opened his mouth, then looked down and kept walking. The deck was too quiet. The PA system crackled. Lieutenant Vaughn, front and center. She moved, no confusion, no hesitation, just measured steps to the front of formation. As she approached, instructors turned slightly. Kane crossed his arms. Another scribbled something in a folder without looking up. Kira stopped 3 paces from the command platform. Heels together. Reporting as ordered, sir. What came next didn't feel like an order. It felt like a script someone else had already written. Captain James Brennan didn't clear his throat, didn't shuffle papers. He lifted a folder from the podium and spoke in a tone that made the entire formation stiffen. Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn, effective immediately, you are administratively separated from West Ridge Naval Training Center. A ripple went through the ranks. Small, involuntary, instantly regretted. Kira didn't move. Her breathing stayed level. But inside the silence, something clicked into place. A few recruits exchanged glances. Even the gulls overhead seemed to hold still. Brennan continued, voice clipped. Grounds for separation include falsified training documentation, unauthorized modification of issued gear, and conduct unbecoming during evaluation drills. Kira blinked once. Not from shock, from calculation. None of it matched anything she'd done. Sir, she said, steady, respectful. May I request clarification on the documentation? Chief Kane stepped forward before Brennan could answer. Not the time, Vaughn. Brennan didn't contradict him. He just closed the folder. Your appeal options are in the packet. You'll be escorted to the gate. There was no packet, but there was a duffel bag. Hers, already packed, sealed, sitting beside the podium like someone knew this would happen today. Like her dismissal had been rehearsed. Two instructors moved toward her, not aggressive, just certain. Men who believed a process had already run its course. Behind her, whispers leaked through. She got kicked. For what? That doesn't sound right. Kane's been after her since the inspection logs. Kira's eyes stayed ahead. Kane held out her badge. The magnetic strip had been scored. Deactivated. We'll take this, he said. No smirk, no malice, just finality. She unpinned it, handed it over. As she reached for her duffel, Brennan added one more line. Training integrity is non-negotiable. Dismissal stands. Kira lifted the bag onto her shoulder. The weight felt wrong, too neatly arranged, packed by someone else's hands, someone who expected her departure before she did. The instructors escorted her toward the gravel path. As she passed the comm shed, she caught Corporal Mercer again, standing near the door. The second their eyes met, he spun and hurried inside. Shut the door a little too fast. Interesting. She reached the gate. The MP scanned her uniform, confused. Ma'am, you're leaving training. She's done, Kane said, flashing the deactivated badge. Kira stepped through. The gate closed behind her with a metallic thunk. Badge gone, son. Clearance revoked. Accusations she couldn't answer, and a base that suddenly acted like she'd never belonged. Kira kept walking. Alone. The coastal access road curved along the bluff just wide enough for two service trucks to squeeze past each other. Kira walked it alone. The only sound was the distant chuff of waves against rock and the dry rustle of eucalyptus overhead. Her duffel bounced against her hip. The strap dug into the same shoulder that once held a weapons crate through a sandstorm. She wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger didn't come in moments like this. Not if you were trained. Civilians jogged the nearby path. Two older men in sweatpants. A young woman with a stroller and earbuds in. One of them gave her a polite nod, eyes flicking from her uniform to her bag, trying to work out why someone in military gear was walking away from a base with no escort. He didn't ask. She didn't explain. She kept walking until the perimeter fence blurred behind the trees, then stopped at a weather-worn bench facing the bay, dropped her bag, sat, pulled out a small notepad from the outer pouch. Not military issue, just personal. Corners curled from sun, pages lined with coordinates, initials, log times, her handwriting neat, exact. The sea mist had faded. The air tasted sharp and salt bitter. Her fingers tapped twice against the notepad spine, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a slim black phone. Private line. Tapped in a number she hadn't used in 6 months. No name, no back and forth. Just one line. Burned. Protocol Sigma. She hit send. No reply. She hadn't expected one. A long breath settled in her lungs. She leaned back, eyes half closed, remembering. Not wistfully. Tactically. 6 weeks earlier, the room was small, windowless, sound-dampened walls that swallowed every echo. Master Chief Garrett Hollis sat across from her at a steel table, 62 years old, broad shoulders that still carried the frame of a warrior, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes that spoke of decades in the sun and sand. He'd been a SEAL during the Gulf War. Team 5, the kind of operator who didn't need to tell stories because the scars did it for him. Now he was senior instructor at West Ridge, a fixture, respected, quiet, and sitting in front of Kira Vaughn with a file marked classified. You know why you're here, Hollis said. It wasn't a question. Kira nodded once. West Ridge has a problem, he continued. Equipment's been disappearing, $4.2 million worth over the last 8 months. Night vision devices, encrypted radios, tactical optics, all serialized, all traceable, all gone. He slid a photograph across the table. Warehouse manifests, inventory logs with red circles around discrepancies. We've narrowed it down to internal, someone with access, someone who knows how to manipulate records. Kira studied the documents, precise, methodical. NCIS, already involved, but they need inside confirmation, someone embedded, someone who can observe without drawing attention. Hollis leaned forward. That's you. Kira looked up, met his eyes. Why me? Because you're good. because you notice things others don't, and because he paused, chose his words carefully, because you know how to operate alone. Silence filled the space between them. Kira's mind was already running scenarios, variables, risk assessments. If I'm burned, then you stay silent for exactly 3 hours. No contact, no defense. You let them think they won. And after 3 hours, Hollis's expression didn't change. Extraction comes. What if they move faster than that? Then you're on your own until we can reposition. Kira considered this, the risk, the isolation, the probability of failure. What's the timeline? 6 weeks, you cross-rate in as a trainee. Standard pipeline. You blend, you observe, you document everything. And if I find the leak, you don't confront, you report. We handle it. Kira nodded slowly. Who knows about this? Myself, Commander Audrey Mitchell at NCIS. And now you. That's it? Captain Brennan doesn't know? Your instructors don't know? No one on this base knows except me. What if they expel me before I finish? Hollis leaned back. Then you were never here for training. You were here to see how far they'd go to protect themselves. Kira understood. This wasn't just about stolen equipment. This was about exposing rot, about forcing people to reveal themselves. When do I start? Tomorrow. Hollis stood, extended his hand. Lieutenant Vaughn, welcome to the most dangerous assignment of your career. She shook it. I've had worse, Master Chief. Hollis almost smiled. We'll see. Back to the present, Kira opened her eyes. The Pacific stretched out before her. Endless, indifferent. Her phone buzzed. One word. Understood. That was it. No questions, no promises, just acknowledgement. Kira slipped the phone back into her pocket, stood, adjusted the duffel strap, and kept walking. Not toward anything, just away. For now. Because sometimes you don't fight in the moment. You let the system show its hand, and then you watch it collapse under the weight of its own lies. But first she had to remember why she was built for this. 5 years earlier, Afghanistan, Forward Operating Base Hammerhead. Kira was 23 years old. Second tour. Intelligence analyst attached to a Marine infantry company. It was 400 hours. Pre-dawn darkness. The kind that made you question whether the sun would ever return. She'd been reviewing satellite imagery in the TOC when the first mortar round hit. The explosion shook the plywood walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Alarm screamed. Kira grabbed her rifle and moved. Outside chaos. Taliban fighters had breached the perimeter wire. Coordinated assault. Well planned. Dozens of insurgents pouring through gaps blown by IEDs. The company commander took shrapnel to the neck in the first 60 seconds. Bled out before the corpsman reached him. The executive officer caught a round through the chest, dead before he hit the ground. The senior NCO lost both legs to a grenade. Within 3 minutes, every officer above Kira's rank was either dead or incapacitated, and she was standing in the middle of the firebase with 47 Marines looking at her for orders. She was an analyst, not infantry, not trained for this, but she was all they had. Kira didn't freeze. She grabbed the radio, called for air support, coordinated defensive positions, directed fire teams to cover the breach points, pulled wounded behind cover, applied tourniquets, kept everyone moving. For 8 hours she held that position. Rounds snapping overhead, RPGs detonating against HESCO barriers. The smell of cordite and blood mixing in the pre-dawn air. She didn't think about fear. She thought about the next decision, the next order, the next life she could save. When the quick reaction force finally arrived at noon, they found Kira standing in the TOC. Uniform soaked with blood, none of it hers. Rifle empty, voice hoarse from shouting commands. 47 Marines had entered that firebase. 47 walked out. They gave her the Silver Star for that, pinned it on her chest 6 months later in a ceremony she barely remembered. But what stayed with her wasn't the medal. It was the knowledge that when everything collapsed, when every system failed, when every leader fell, she could stand alone and hold the line. That was the woman Master Chief Hollis had recruited. That was the woman Chief Kane had just expelled. And that was the woman who was about to remind them what a mistake looked like. Kira walked another half-mile before she found what she was looking for. A small roadside motel, the kind with peeling paint and a neon sign that hadn't worked in years. Cash only, no questions. She paid for 3 hours. The clerk didn't look up. Room 7, ground floor, view of the parking lot. Kira locked the door behind her, drew the curtains, dropped the duffel on the bed. Then she opened the false bottom she'd sewn into the lining 6 weeks ago. inside a tablet, encrypted, powered off. She turned it on, waited for the security protocols to cycle through, the screen filled with folders, documents, photographs, audio recordings, 6 weeks of evidence, inventory logs with discrepancies circled in red, shipping manifests that didn't match official records, photographs of after-hours activity at Warehouse 7, audio of conversations she'd recorded using equipment hidden in her gear. Everything. Kira opened the main file, titled simply West Ridge Operation. Subjects identified Chief Victor Kane, Lieutenant Commander Blake Sutton. Pattern confirms systematic theft of military equipment. Estimated value $4.2 million. Destination unknown, likely black market resale. Accomplices under investigation. Timeline ongoing for at least 18 months. Evidence status sufficient for federal prosecution. Kira scrolled through the data, methodical, confirming everything was intact. Her phone buzzed again, this time a longer message. Sit tight, zero contact, 3 hours from your burn time, then we move, Hollis. Kira checked her watch. 10:47 a.m., extraction at 1:47 p.m., 3 hours. 180 minutes to stay invisible while Kane and Sutton scrambled to cover their tracks. She could do 3 hours. She'd done 8 under live fire with 47 lives depending on her. 3 hours of waiting was nothing. Kira set the tablet aside, pulled a protein bar from her bag, ate without tasting it. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Patient, silent, ready. Because patience wasn't passive. It was controlled aggression waiting for the perfect moment. And her moment was coming in exactly 3 hours. Back at West Ridge Naval Training Center, Chief Victor Kane stood in his office. Second floor of the admin building. Window overlooking the parade ground where Kira Vaughn had been expelled less than an hour ago. He wasn't smiling. Lieutenant Commander Blake Sutton sat across from him. Younger, nervous energy, supply officer with access to every inventory system on base. She's gone, Sutton said. Clean separation, no appeals filed, no contact with JAG. Kane didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the file on his desk. Kira Vaughn's service record, 6 years. Exemplary performance reviews. Silver Star. Combat deployments. Intelligence background. Too clean, too perfect. She was digging, Kane said quietly. Into what? Inventory discrepancies. She flagged 2 shipments last month. Asked questions about authorization signatures. Sutton's face went pale. You think she knows? Kane turned from the window. I think she was sent here to know. Silence. Sutton swallowed hard. What do we do? Kane picked up the file, studied Kira's photograph. Those calm eyes, that expression that gave nothing away. We move the shipment tonight. Everything in Warehouse 7. Clean it out, wipe the logs. By tomorrow morning, there's nothing to find. And Vaughn, she's off base, no clearance, no authority. Even if she talks, who's going to believe her? She was just expelled for falsifying documents. Sutton didn't look convinced. What if she's not alone? Kane's jaw tightened. Then we make sure there's nothing left to find. And if anyone comes asking, we've got a paper trail that says she's a liar. He closed the file, dropped it in the drawer. Give Mason and Thorne. Tell them to keep eyes on the area. If Vaughn shows up anywhere near this base, I want to know immediately. I want them to watch, nothing more. We're not criminals, Blake. We're patriots taking back what the system stole from us. It was the same justification Kane had been using for 18 months. His son, Lance Corporal Ethan Kane, had died in Fallujah in 2007. 19 years old. ED strike? Killed instantly. The official report said equipment failure, faulty communication gear that didn't warn the convoy about the roadside bomb. Kane had spent years trying to find out who was responsible, who'd authorized substandard equipment, who'd cut corners to save budget dollars while his son bled out in the Iraqi sand. He never got answers, so he'd taken his own justice, started skimming equipment, selling it, building a nest egg that he told himself was restitution for what the system had stolen from him. It had started small, a few night vision devices, some spare optics. Then it grew. $4.2 million over 18 months. And now a 28-year-old lieutenant with a combat record and an intelligence background had just been expelled from his base under circumstances that looked a little too convenient. Kane knew what that meant. It meant someone was watching. It meant he had maybe 3 hours to sanitize everything before federal authorities descended. He picked up his phone, dialed. Mason, it's Kane. I need you and Thorne mobile, now. Corporal Dylan Mercer sat in the admin office. Alone. His hands were shaking. He'd just watched Lieutenant Kira Vaughn get expelled. publicly humiliated, escorted off base like a criminal. And he knew it was wrong because 3 weeks ago Dylan had been working late, filing reports, and he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Chief Kane and Lieutenant Commander Sutton, loading crates into an unmarked van. 2,300 hours, warehouse 7, no authorization paperwork, no manifest. Dylan had said nothing, told himself it wasn't his business. But then he'd started noticing things. Inventory discrepancies, missing serial numbers, logs that didn't match physical counts. And he'd seen Lieutenant Vaughn notice the same things. She'd been quiet about it, didn't make accusations, just documented, asked careful questions, followed protocol. And now she was gone. Dylan knew what that meant. It meant she'd gotten too close. And it meant Chief Kane was willing to destroy careers to protect whatever he was doing. Dylan stared at his computer screen, cursor blinking. He could walk away, pretend he didn't know, keep his head down, finish his tour and move on. Or he could do something. His father had been a Marine, served in Desert Storm, came home with the values that Dylan had grown up hearing about. Honor, integrity, courage. Dylan thought about what his father would do. Then he opened a new browser window. Accessed Lieutenant Commander Sutton's shared drive. Dylan had admin credentials part of his job. And he started copying files. Shipping manifests, financial records, communication logs, everything. It took 11 minutes to download onto a USB drive. When he finished, Dylan pocketed the drive, closed the window, cleared his browser history. Then he sat back and tried to stop his hands from shaking. He didn't know what he was going to do with the files yet, but he knew Lieutenant Vaughn had been right, and he knew someone had to stand up. Even if it cost him everything. 3 hours seemed like a long time, but Kira Vaughn knew how quickly 3 hours could disappear. She sat in that motel room, curtains drawn, tablet secured, phone silent, and she waited. Like she'd waited in that firebase in Afghanistan while the sun crawled across the sky and enemy fire chipped away at the barriers. Like she'd waited during every mission brief, every intelligence collection, every moment, when patience was the difference between success and catastrophe. 3 hours, 180 minutes. At the end of it, a Navy SEAL Blackhawk would drop from the sky, and every person who'd thought they could bury her would learn what happened when you underestimated silence. Because silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And Kira Vaughn's strategy was about to pay off. The clock on the motel nightstand read 10:47 a.m. Kira watched the number shift to 10:48, 179 minutes remaining. She'd learned patience in places where impatience got you killed. Learned to count seconds while mortar rounds walked closer. Learn to breathe steady while waiting for the enemy to pass your position. 3 hours was nothing, except when every minute carried the weight of 6 weeks of work. Every second held the possibility of Kane and Sutton erasing evidence. Every tick of that clock was another chance for something to go wrong. Kira stood, stretched, checked the window. The parking lot was quiet. A few civilian vehicles. Nobody watching. Nobody waiting. She moved away from the curtain, sat back on the bed, opened the tablet again. The evidence was solid, airtight. But evidence only mattered if it reached the right people. If Kane moved fast enough, if Sutton sanitized the right systems, there might be gaps. Questions. Reasonable doubt. That's why the 3 hours mattered. Hollis had calculated it precisely. 3 hours was long enough for Kane to panic. Long enough for him to make mistakes. But not long enough for him to completely cover his tracks. It was a trap. And Kira was the bait. She just had to stay alive long enough for it to spring. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Kira stared at it. Hollis wouldn't call from an unknown number. Neither would Commander Mitchell. She didn't answer. 10 seconds later, another buzz. Text message. Lieutenant Vaughn, this is Dylan Mercer. I need to talk to you. It's important. Kira's finger hovered over the delete button. Dylan Mercer, junior admin, 23 years old, the one who'd avoided her eyes this morning, who'd rushed away when she caught him watching. Could be genuine. Could be Kane using him to track her location. She made the calculation. Typed, how did you get this number? Response came quickly. Personnel file. I have admin access. I know what you're really doing here. I have files. Sutton's files, please. Kira considered. If it was a trap answering, would give away her position. If it was genuine, those files could be the difference between a good case and an unbreakable one. She typed, public library, main branch, 1 hour, come alone. If I see anyone else, I disappear. Understood. Kira powered down the phone. Removed the battery. Hollis had taught her that. Phones could be tracked even when off. Only removing the battery guaranteed silence. She gathered her gear, wiped down the room for prints, probably unnecessary, but training was training. Left through the back exit. The public library was 2 miles away. She'd scouted it during her second week. 3 entrances, good sight lines, cameras at every exit, safe public with enough foot traffic to blend, but not so crowded you couldn't spot surveillance. Kira walked, didn't rush, just another person out for morning exercise. The sun had burned through the coastal fog, blue sky emerging, 72 degrees, perfect San Diego weather that felt wrong for what was about to happen. She reached the library at 11:23 a.m., checked the perimeter, noted vehicles, spotted 2 possible surveillance positions, both empty. Inside, she chose a spot near the back. Computer terminals to her left, reference section to her right, clear view of the entrance. She opened a book, local history, nothing she cared about, and waited. Dylan Mercer arrived at 11:41 a.m. Alone, no visible tail. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, gray t-shirt, baseball cap, trying to blend, doing a decent job of it. He spotted her, started to approach directly. Kira held up one hand. Stop. She pointed to the computer terminal section, gestured for him to sit 3 stations down from her. Dylan understood, took the seat. Kira watched the entrance for another 2 minutes. Nobody followed. Nobody showed unusual interest. She moved to the terminal next to Dylan, sat down, kept her voice low. You've got 2 minutes. Talk. Dylan's hands were shaking. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket, set it on the table between them. Sutton's files, shipping manifests going back 18 months, financial records, wire transfers to offshore accounts, communication logs with someone named Marcus Webb. I looked him up. He's a known arms dealer. Kira didn't touch the drive. Yet. Why are you doing this? Dylan looked at her, eyes red, sleep deprived. Because 3 weeks ago I saw Chief Kane and Commander Sutton loading equipment into an unmarked van at 2300 hours. No paperwork, no authorization. And I did nothing. His voice cracked slightly. I told myself it wasn't my business, that I was just an admin, that it wasn't my place to question senior officers. He stared at his hands. Then this morning I watched them destroy your career for doing exactly what I should have done, for having the courage I didn't have. Kira studied him, reading body language, micro-expressions, looking for deception. She found none, just guilt, shame, and determination. When this breaks, she said quietly, everyone gets investigated. You access those files without authorization. They'll come after you too. I know. You could lose your clearance, your career, everything. I know. Then why? Dylan met her eyes. Because I want to be able to sleep at night again, ma'am. Because my father taught me that integrity matters more than comfort. And because watching you take that walk this morning is the worst thing I've ever seen. Silence stretched between them. Kira reached for the USB drive, pocketed it. Did you tell anyone about this? No, ma'am. Does anyone know you're here? No, ma'am. Good. You're going to go back to base. You're going to act completely normal. You're going to do your job exactly the way you did it yesterday. And you're not going to contact me again. Understood. Yes, ma'am. If they ask about me, you say nothing. You know nothing. You saw nothing unusual. Yes, ma'am. Kira leaned closer. Corporal Mercer, what you did took courage. Real courage. The kind that costs something. Your father would be proud. Dylan's eyes went wet. He blinked rapidly. Thank you, ma'am. Now get out of here. And Dylan, he paused. When federal agents show up and they will you tell them everything. You cooperate completely. You'll be fine. He nodded, stood, walked out without looking back. Kira waited 5 minutes, scanned the library again. Still clear. She moved to a private study room, locked the door, pulled out her tablet and the USB drive. The files were exactly what Dylan had promised. Shipping manifest with serial numbers that matched equipment reported missing from West Ridge. Wire transfers totaling $4.2 million. Email correspondence with Marcus Webb discussing prices, delivery schedules, and payment terms. It was perfect, airtight. The kind of evidence that ended careers and started prison sentences. Kira encrypted the files, uploaded them to a secure server only Hollis could access. Then she wiped the USB drive and snapped it in half. She checked her watch, 12:04 p.m., 1 hour and 43 minutes remaining, time to move again. She was gathering her things when she heard it. Faint, through the study room window, an engine, idling. Wrong rhythm for civilian traffic. Kira moved to the window. Careful, Didn't show herself. Black SUV, tinted windows, two men in the front seat, both wearing tactical casual cargo pants, dark shirts, the kind of outfit that screamed private security. One of them was looking at a phone, then at the library entrance, then back at the phone. Tracking. Kane's contractors. Had to be, but how she'd removed the phone battery. She'd been careful. Then she understood. The motel. They'd tracked her to the motel. Standard surveillance watch where she went. And libraries were an obvious choice for someone who needed internet access. Kira assessed her options. 3 exits. Front entrance covered by the SUV. Side entrance led to parking lot where they'd see her. Back entrance led to delivery area and dumpsters. Back entrance it was. She moved quickly but not frantically. Drew attention by rushing, you became memorable. Stay calm, you were just another patron leaving. She exited through the back, stepped into the delivery area, chain link fence to her left, dumpsters to her right, alley stretching toward the main street 200 yards away, footsteps behind her. Kira didn't turn, just walked. Measured pace. Ma'am, Lieutenant Vaughn. Male voice, deep, professional. She stopped, turned. 2 men, both 6 feet plus, both fit, ex-military posture. One had a faded Ranger tab tattoo on his forearm. Can I help you, gentlemen? The one with the tattoo smiled, not friendly. Just want to talk. Chief Kane sent us. Said there might be some misunderstanding about this morning. No misunderstanding, I was expelled. I'm leaving. Right, but the chief's worried you might have taken some things that don't belong to you. Files, records, that kind of thing. Kira's hand moved slowly to her side, where her concealed carry would be if she were armed. She wasn't armed, but they didn't know that. I think you gentlemen should step back. The second contractor, shorter, broader scar across his jawline, moved to her right, flanking position. We're not here to hurt you, he said. Just here to recover property. Hand over the tablet and the phone, and we all walk away. Kira's mind calculated distances, angles, threat assessment. 2 trained operators, both probably armed, both bigger and stronger. But she had advantages they didn't. She knew this terrain. She'd spent 6 weeks studying every block within 3 miles of this base, and she'd held a firebase against Taliban fighters for 8 hours. 2 contractors in an alley was actually an improvement. Last chance, Tattoo said. The tablet. Kira smiled. Cold. Come take it. She moved before they expected, backward, fast, toward the dumpsters. They came after her, exactly as she'd anticipated. She grabbed the dumpster lid, heavy industrial steel, and swung it as Tattoo rounded the corner. Caught him across the shoulder. Not enough to disable, but enough to disrupt. He stumbled. Cursed. Scarface came in low, trying to tackle. Kira sidestepped, used his momentum, grabbed his jacket, and guided him face first into the brick wall. He went down. Not unconscious, but dazed. Tattoo recovered, smarter now, more careful. He circled. Professional fighter's stance. You're good, he said, but you're not walking out of here with that evidence. Watch me. He lunged, fast, trained. Kira deflected, struck at his knee. He blocked, countered with an elbow that grazed her ribs. Pain flared. She ignored it. They traded strikes, both breathing hard, neither giving ground. Then Kira heard it, in the distance, faint but growing louder. Rotor blades. The contractors heard it too. Exchanged glances. That's not for us, Tattoo said. No, Kira replied. It's for me. She kicked hard, caught Tattoo in the solar plexus. He bent double, gasping. Scarface was trying to stand. Kira swept his legs. He went down again. She ran, out of the alley, toward the main street, the sound of rotors growing louder. Behind her, Tattoo shouted into a radio. Target's mobile, heading north on Pacific Avenue. We need backup. Kira didn't look back, just ran. 3 blocks. 4. The helicopter sound was directly overhead now. She risked a glance up. Navy gray, seal markings, banking toward the coastline. Early. The Blackhawk was early. She checked her watch. 12:43 p.m. 1 hour and 4 minutes since her expulsion. Not 3 hours, but close enough. Her phone, still with the battery removed, was in her pocket. She stopped, ducked into a coffee shop. Bathroom, reinstalled the battery, powered up. 17 missed calls, all from Hollis's number. She called back. Vaughn. Hollis's voice was tight. Where are you, see? Pacific Avenue. Just had contact with Kane's contractors. 2 of them. I'm clear, but they're mobilizing. We know. We've been monitoring their communications. They're panicking. Sutton just tried to wipe the base inventory system remotely. FBI's already seized the servers. How did you move this fast? Your evidence from this morning was enough to get a warrant. Federal task force has been staged since 0600. We just needed Kane to make a move. And Dylan Mercer's files. Brief pause. Already received, already being processed. That kid just sealed the case. Kira exhaled. 6 weeks of work. 6 weeks of watching, waiting, documenting. All of it about to pay off. Where do you need me? She asked. Coastal clearing, half-mile north of your position. Coordinates incoming. Blackhawk will extract you there. We're moving on West Ridge now. Roger that. Kira. Hollis's voice softened slightly. You did good. Better than good. Just doing my job, Master Chief. No, you did something a lot harder than just your job. You trusted the process when everything in you wanted to fight back. That takes discipline most people don't have. Learn from the best. Get to that LZ. See you on the other side. The line went dead. Kira pocketed the phone, exited the coffee shop, oriented herself, half-mile north, through residential area, then open ground near the coast. She moved quickly now. No more hiding, no more waiting. This was the extract, the final phase. Behind her, sirens began to wail. Federal vehicles heading toward West Ridge. The trap was springing, and every rat was about to be caught. She reached the coastal clearing at 12:58 p.m. Open grass, wind coming off the Pacific. The Blackhawk already circling. Coming in. It touched down 50 yards away. Rotors still hot. Side door open. A figure emerged, not just any SEAL. Commander Marcus Reed, DevGru liaison, senior enough that his presence meant this wasn't just a local operation anymore. He jogged toward her, hand extended. Lieutenant Vaughn, hell of a morning. She shook his hand. Had to shout over the rotors. Sir, what's the situation? FBI and NCIS hit West Ridge 7 minutes ago. Kane and Sutton both in custody. Warehouse 7 secured. Evidence recovered. You did it. Dylan Mercer. Being debriefed. He'll be fine. Immunity in exchange for testimony. Reed gestured toward the helicopter. Time to go back. Time to show that base who you really are. Kira looked at the Blackhawk, then back toward West Ridge. Hidden behind the coastal hills but close. 3 hours ago she'd walked away from that base in disgrace. Badge stripped. Career apparently destroyed. Now she was about to walk back in with the full weight of federal law enforcement behind her. Let's do it, she said. They moved to the helicopter. Kira climbed in, strapped in beside Reed. The crew chief handed her a headset. Ready, ma'am? She nodded. The Blackhawk lifted, smooth, powerful. Through the window, Kira could see the coastline dropping away, the base coming into view. Reed's voice came through the headset. For what it's worth, Lieutenant Hollis told me what you did in Afghanistan. FOB Hammerhead. 8 hours. 47 lives. I read the after-action report. Ancient history, sir. No, it's proof. Proof that you're exactly the kind of operator we need. The kind who doesn't break under pressure. The kind who does the right thing even when it costs everything. Kira didn't respond, just watched West Ridge growing larger. She could see vehicles, federal agents swarming, personnel being assembled on the parade ground. The same parade ground where she'd been humiliated 3 hours ago. They're going to ask you to do this again, Reed said. Norfolk, similar pattern, maybe worse. I know. And you'll say yes. It wasn't a question. Kira smiled slightly. I'll say yes. The Blackhawk banked, began its descent toward West Ridge. Below, every person on that base was watching, wondering, trying to understand what was happening. In 60 seconds, they'd find out. In 60 seconds, Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn would step off that helicopter and walk back onto the base that had expelled her. Not as a failure, as a federal witness, as an undercover operator who'd just taken down a multi-million-dollar theft ring, as proof that silence wasn't weakness. It was the deadliest weapon in the arsenal. The Blackhawk touched down on the parade ground at 1:14 p.m., 3 hours and 27 minutes after her expulsion. Close enough, the rotors began to slow. The side door remained open. Through it, Kira could see faces, hundreds of them, recruits, instructors, staff, all staring, all wondering who was about to emerge from a Navy SEAL helicopter. Reed looked at her. Ready. Kira unbuckled, stood. Her uniform was dirty, blood on her sleeve from the alley fight, face streaked with sweat and dust. She looked exactly like someone who'd just spent 3 hours surviving, which was perfect. because that's exactly what she'd done. Ready, sir? She stepped toward the door, and West Ridge Naval Training Center was about to learn what happened when you underestimated a woman who'd been trained to operate alone. The lesson was going to hurt. Kira Vaughn stepped out of the Blackhawk and into a silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Every eye on West Ridge Naval Training Center was locked on her. Recruits frozen mid-step, instructors with clipboards hanging limp at their sides. Even the gulls overhead seemed to have paused their endless circling. Commander Marcus Reed emerged behind her. His boots hit the tarmac with authority that needed no announcement. DevGru, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the kind of rank that made full bird colonels straighten their spines. Behind him came two more figures, FBI tactical jackets, NCIS credentials visible on their belts. They fanned out with the practiced ease of people who'd done this 100 times before. The rotors began to spin down, the high whine dropping to a steady thrum, then silence. Complete, total, oppressive silence. Captain James Brennan came out of the admin building at a near run. His face was pale, confused, the look of a man who'd just watched his carefully ordered world tilt sideways. He approached Reed with his hand already extended, trying to regain control through protocol. Commander, I wasn't notified of any inbound aircraft. If this is regarding this morning's administrative action, I can assure you. Reed didn't shake his hand. Instead, he pulled a folder from his jacket. The same way Brennan had pulled Kira's expulsion papers 6 hours ago, the symmetry wasn't accidental. Captain Brennan, I'm Commander Marcus Reed, DevGru Liaison. I'm here regarding the immediate apprehension of Chief Victor Kane and Lieutenant Commander Blake Sutton. Both are currently in federal custody. The color drained from Brennan's face. I'm sorry, what? Chief Kane and Commander Sutton have been arrested on charges of theft of government property, conspiracy to commit fraud, and trafficking in stolen military equipment. The arrests were made approximately 20 minutes ago. FBI and NCIS are currently securing evidence at Warehouse 7. Brennan's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Reed continued, voice flat, professional, the tone of someone reading a death sentence. Additionally, I'm here to formally reinstate Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn to active duty status at West Ridge Naval Training Center. Her administrative separation this morning was conducted in error and is hereby voided. He handed the folder to Brennan. That's the federal warrant for Kane and Sutton. Also included are Lieutenant Vaughn's actual orders. I think you'll find them illuminating. Brennan opened the folder with shaking hands. The first document was standard federal warrant paperwork. Names, charges, the seal of the United States District Court for the Southern District of California. The second document made his hands shake harder. Classified orders, dated 8 weeks prior. Signed by the Commander of Naval Special Warfare Command, Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn. Temporary assignment to West Ridge Naval Training Center. Purpose embedded counterintelligence operation. Authority Joint Special Operations Command. Classification level, top secret. Special access required. Brennan read it twice, then looked up at Kira. She stood 3 paces behind Reed. Uniform dirty, face expressionless. A woman who'd been publicly humiliated 6 hours ago and was now watching the men responsible get destroyed. But there was no triumph in her eyes. No satisfaction, just professional observation. Captain Brennan, Reed's voice cut through the silence. Did you verify Lieutenant Vaughn's orders before signing her expulsion paperwork? Chief Kane presented the evidence. The documentation seemed, did you verify it independently? Brennan's silence was answer enough. Reed nodded slowly, the way a teacher nods when a student confirms they didn't study for the test. Lieutenant Vaughn was placed at West Ridge specifically to investigate irregularities in equipment inventory. She spent 6 weeks documenting a theft ring that has cost the United States military $4.2 million in stolen equipment. Her work led directly to this morning's arrests. He let that sink in. And you expelled her, publicly, without verification, based on falsified evidence presented by the very men she was investigating. Brennan looked like he might be sick. I had no idea, sir. I swear I had no... No, you didn't, because you didn't ask. You trusted the wrong people. And in doing so, you nearly compromised a federal investigation and destroyed the career of an officer who was doing exactly what she was ordered to do. The parade ground was completely silent now. Everyone within earshot was hearing this, and everyone who couldn't hear was reading it in body language. In the way Brennan's shoulders slumped, in the way Kira stood perfectly still, Reed turned to face the assembled personnel. All personnel, formation, now. They moved, fast. 2 minutes and they were assembled. recruits in the front rows, instructors and staff in the back. Nobody was smiling. Nobody looked confused anymore. They understood. Something massive had just happened, and they were about to find out what. Reed waited until everyone was in place, then he gestured to Kira. Lieutenant Vaughn, front and center. She moved. Same measured steps as this morning, same calm demeanor. But this time when she stopped 3 paces from the command position, she wasn't alone. Reed stood beside her, and behind them 2 FBI agents and 3 NCIS investigators fanned out like an honor guard. Reed addressed the formation, his voice carried across the parade ground without needing amplification. At 06:30 this morning, Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn was administratively separated from this command. The charges were falsification of training documents, unauthorized modification of gear, and conduct unbecoming. Pause. Let them remember. Those charges were fabricated, presented by Chief Victor Kane with the cooperation of Lieutenant Commander Blake Sutton. Both men are now in federal custody. Murmurs rippled through the formation, quickly silenced. Lieutenant Vaughn was not here for training. She was here conducting a classified counterintelligence operation authorized by Naval Special Warfare Command and coordinated with NCIS and the FBI. He gestured to Kira. For 6 weeks, this officer operated alone. No backup, no support structure. She integrated into your training cycle, observed your procedures, and documented systematic theft of military equipment valued at over $4 million. Reed's voice hardened. She did this while maintaining her cover, while enduring suspicion from instructors who thought she was too precise, while knowing that if her cover was blown, she would be isolated and vulnerable. He let that hang in the air. This morning, when Chief Kane realized Lieutenant Vaughn had gathered sufficient evidence, he orchestrated her expulsion. He used his position. He manipulated your commanding officer. He weaponized the administrative system to destroy someone who was doing her duty. Reed turned to look at Brennan. The captain stood off to the side now. No longer in command position, just another officer watching his career implode in real time. And it almost worked. If Lieutenant Vaughn hadn't been exactly who she is, a combat veteran, an intelligence professional, and an officer with the discipline to follow orders, even when everything in her wanted to fight back, we might not be standing here right now. He faced the formation again. Over the next 72 hours, federal investigators will be interviewing personnel, reviewing records, determining the full extent of this criminal enterprise. If you have information relevant to this investigation, you will be asked to provide it. Your cooperation is not optional. Reed's eyes swept across the assembled faces. Let me be clear about something. What happened here today is not a failure of the Navy. It's not a failure of this base. It's a failure of individuals who forgot that the uniform comes with responsibilities that don't disappear when nobody's watching. He stepped back, gestured to Kira. Lieutenant Vaughn, do you have anything to say to this formation? Kira hadn't expected that, but she didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, looked at the faces staring back at her. Young recruits who'd watched her get humiliated this morning. Instructors who'd whispered about her. The entire machinery of West Ridge that had ground her up and spit her out. When she spoke, her voice was calm, steady. The voice of someone who'd held a firebase under fire for 8 hours. 6 weeks ago, I was given an assignment. It wasn't an easy one. I had to lie to people. I had to let people think I was something I wasn't. I had to accept suspicion and hostility and isolation. She paused. But the mission was clear. There was corruption here. People were stealing equipment that belongs to you. That belongs to every service member. Equipment that saves lives, that gives our people advantages in combat. That brings them home. Her eyes found Corporal Dylan Mercer in the formation. He was pale, terrified, but he met her gaze. Someone on this base had the courage to come forward, to provide evidence, even though it meant risking everything. That person reminded me why we do this, why we wear this uniform. She looked at Brennan next. Captain Brennan, this morning you expelled me based on false evidence. You didn't verify it. You didn't question it. You trusted the word of senior officers without independent confirmation. Brennan looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. That was a mistake, sir, but it's a mistake that can be learned from. Next time someone stands before you accused of something, verify it. Question it. Make sure the process is real before you destroy someone's career. She turned back to the formation. To everyone else, you're going to hear things about me over the next few days. You're going to learn details about this investigation. Some of you might feel betrayed because I wasn't honest about why I was here. Kira's voice softened slightly. I understand that, but understand this. Every day I was here, I was doing exactly what you're all training to do, following orders, completing the mission, even when it was hard, even when it hurt, even when walking away would have been easier. She stood taller. This base still has integrity, still has honor. Today's arrests don't change that. If anything, they prove it. Because the system worked. The bad actors were caught. Justice is being served. She snapped to attention, saluted the formation. Carry on. Reed nodded once, satisfied. Formation dismissed. They dispersed, slowly. People talking in low voices, processing, trying to understand. Kira stood in place until the parade ground cleared. Then she allowed herself one deep breath. It was over. 6 weeks of work, 3 hours of survival, and now vindication. But she felt no triumph, just exhaustion. Reed appeared at her shoulder. That was well said. Thank you, sir. Mean it. Every word. He studied her for a moment. Master Chief Hollis is in the admin building, 3rd floor. He's been running coordination with NCIS. Thought you might want to see him. Kira nodded, started walking. Behind her, FBI agents were loading boxes of evidence into vehicles. NCIS investigators were photographing Warehouse 7, the machinery of federal law enforcement grinding forward. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, found the conference room with NCIS placards on the door. Master Chief Garrett Hollis stood at a table covered in documents. 62 years old, gray at the temples, shoulders that still carried the weight of 3 decades in the teams. He looked up when she entered, face weathered by sun and salt and sand. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Hollis smiled, small, genuine. Hell of a morning, Lieutenant. Yes, Master Chief. He gestured to a chair. Sit. You look like you could use it. Kira sat, only then realized how tired she was, adrenaline draining away. Leaving behind the ache in her ribs from the alley fight, the exhaustion of 6 weeks maintaining cover, the weight of 3 hours knowing everything could still fall apart. Hollis poured coffee from a thermos, handed her a cup. Black, the way warriors drink it. She took it, sipped. It was terrible. Perfect. Corporal Mercer, she asked, being debriefed by NCIS. He'll be granted immunity in exchange for testimony. The files he provided filled critical gaps. Without them, Kane and Sutton might have argued the evidence was circumstantial. And Kane Sutton, both in federal custody, both lawyering up, both looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. The trafficking charges alone are serious. Add in the classified intel they were selling, and we're talking about potential treason charges. Hollis sat across from her. You did good work, Kira. Better than good. The evidence you gathered is airtight. The paper trail is clear. This case is going to be a textbook example of how to run a counterintelligence operation. Dylan Mercer did the real work at the end. No, you created the conditions where someone like Mercer could find the courage to come forward. You showed him what integrity looks like. That matters. Kira stared into her coffee. I let them expel me. Stood there and took it. Part of me wanted to fight back. Wanted to tell them who I was. Make them stop. But you didn't. No, Master Chief, I didn't. Why? She looked up, met his eyes. Because you taught me that patience isn't passive, it's controlled aggression. And sometimes the best way to win is to let the enemy think they've already won. Hollis nodded slowly. 30 years ago in the Gulf War, that lesson cost me everything. Kuwait. My entire team walked into an ambush because someone on our side was selling intel to the Iraqis. Enemy knew exactly where we'd be, when we'd be there, what our capabilities were. His voice went quiet. 7 men died. I was the only one who walked out. Spent 30 years wondering if I could have prevented it, if I'd been smarter, more careful, more suspicious. He looked at Kira. When I found out West Ridge had a leak, when I learned equipment was being sold to the same black market networks that eventually arm our enemies, I knew I had a chance to stop it before more people died. Before another team walked into an ambush because their gear was compromised. Why me? Kira asked. Because of FOB Hammerhead. Because you held that position for 8 hours alone. Because when everything collapsed, when every system failed, you didn't break. You adapted. You led. You survived. He leaned forward. That's what this mission needed. Someone who could operate alone, who could handle isolation, who could maintain discipline even when everything in them wanted to quit. Hollis smiled slightly. You exceeded every expectation. And you reminded this old seal why we do this, why we serve. Kira felt something tight in her chest loosen. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed to hear that. What happens now, she asked. Now FBI and NCIS spend the next 6 months building their case. You'll be called to testify. Multiple times. Defense attorneys will try to tear apart your methodology, your evidence, your credibility. It won't be fun. And after that, Hollis pulled a folder from the stack on the table, slid it across to her. After that, you have options. You can return to fleet assignment, take a teaching position, request transfer to any command in the Navy. He tapped the folder. Or you can do it again. Kira opened the folder. Inside, preliminary intelligence report. Norfolk Naval Station, Virginia. Similar pattern to West Ridge. Equipment discrepancies. Unexplained inventory losses. Possible insider involvement. They want me to go undercover again. They want the best. That's you. Kira read through the brief, 6 pages, detailed enough to be concerning, vague enough to need someone on the ground. Timeline, 3 weeks to prep, then insertion. Estimated duration, 8 weeks. She closed the folder, looked at Hollis. You think I should do it? I think you're the only one who can answer that. This isn't an easy life. Undercover work burns people out fast. The isolation, the constant deception, the inability to trust anyone. He paused. But if you can handle it, and you've proven you can, you'll save lives. You'll protect people who don't even know they need protecting. That matters. Kira thought about it. About 6 weeks of loneliness. About 3 hours of survival. About walking off that base this morning, wondering if she'd ever wear the uniform again. And she thought about the equipment, the $4.2 million in stolen gear that would have ended up on a black market. That would have eventually been used against American service members, against people like the Marines she'd held that firebase with in Afghanistan. How long do I have to decide? 72 hours. She nodded, stood. Thank you, Master Chief, for trusting me, for believing in me. Hollis stood as well, extended his hand. Thank you, Lieutenant, for reminding me that the new generation is just as capable as the old one, maybe more so. They shook, firm, equal. 2 operators who understood what it meant to serve. Kira left the conference room, walked down the hallway. Her footsteps echoed off the linoleum. She needed rest, needed food, needed to process everything that had happened. But first she needed air. She exited the admin building. The sun was low now, late afternoon, golden light slanting across the parade ground. Lieutenant Vaughn? She turned. Captain Brennan stood 10 feet away, hands at his sides, face exhausted. Sir, he approached slowly, stopped at a respectful distance. I owe you an apology, a real one, not the public one I'll be required to give. Kira waited. This morning I destroyed your career, or I tried to without verifying the facts, without questioning the source, without doing my job as a commanding officer. His voice was thick with regret. I let Kane manipulate me. I let my trust in senior officers override my responsibility to junior ones. That's inexcusable. Sir, no, let me finish. He took a breath. You stood in front of this entire base and let me humiliate you. You could have stopped it with one word, one phone call, but you didn't, because the mission mattered more than your pride. Brennan met her eyes. That's leadership, real leadership, the kind I should have recognized, the kind I failed to protect. Kira considered her response carefully. Captain, you made a mistake, but you're here now, owning it. That matters too. Does it? Yes, sir. Because the hardest thing about command isn't making perfect decisions. It's recognizing when you've made a wrong one and learning from it. She gestured toward the base. You have hundreds of people here who need to see that leaders can admit mistakes. That integrity doesn't mean being right all the time. It means being honest all the time. Brennan nodded slowly. I don't know if my career survives this. That's above my pay grade, sir. But I know this. If you take this moment and use it to become a better officer, a better leader, then something good came from it. He extended his hand. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your service, for your professionalism, and for your grace. She shook it. Just doing my job, sir. He walked away, shoulders a little straighter than before. Kira continued toward the coastal path, the same path she'd walked this morning, badge revoked, career in ruins, future uncertain. She reached the weathered bench overlooking the Pacific, sat. The water stretched endlessly, gray-blue under the fading light, waves rolling in with patient inevitability. She pulled out her phone and powered it up. 17 messages, most from Hollis, a few from Commander Mitchell at NCIS, one from Dylan Mercer that just said, "Thank you, ma'am," and one from a number she didn't recognize. She opened it. "Lieutenant Vaughn, this is Commander Audrey Mitchell, NCIS. Outstanding work today. When you're ready to discuss Norfolk, call me. We need you. The Navy needs you. America needs you." Kira stared at the message. 3 weeks ago, she would have said yes immediately, would have jumped at the chance to do it again, to prove herself, to serve. But 3 weeks ago, she hadn't spent 6 weeks in isolation, hadn't walked off a base in disgrace, hadn't fought for her life in an alley while waiting for extraction that might never come. 3 weeks ago, she hadn't learned what it really cost to operate alone. She thought about FOB Hammerhead, about 8 hours of holding that firebase, about 47 Marines who lived because she refused to quit. That had been different. That had been immediate survival. No time to think, just react. This was asking her to walk into that isolation voluntarily, to choose it, to embrace it for weeks at a time. Could she do it again? She looked at the water, thought about the question, and realized the answer wasn't about capability. She could do it. She'd proven that. The question was whether she should, whether the cost was worth it. Her phone buzzed again. Hollis. "When you're ready to talk about Norfolk, I'm here. No pressure. Just know that whatever you decide, I'm proud of you." Kira smiled slightly, typed back, "Thank you, Master Chief. Need to think. We'll call tomorrow." She pocketed the phone, stood. The sun was touching the horizon now, orange and red bleeding across the sky. She walked back toward the base, not rushing, just walking. Tomorrow she'd make the decision. Tomorrow she'd figure out what came next. Tonight she was just going to be Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn, combat veteran, intelligence officer, a woman who'd proven that silence wasn't weakness. It was the deadliest weapon in the arsenal. 3 days later, Kira sat across from Master Chief Hollis in a small cafe off base. Civilian clothes, no uniforms. Just two people having coffee. "You've made your decision," Hollis said. Not a question. "Yes, Master Chief." And Kira stirred her coffee, watching the cream swirl. "I'll do Norfolk, but I need something from you first." "Name it." "I need to know this isn't the rest of my career, that eventually I get to serve openly, that I'm not just going to be the undercover operator who gets burned out after 3 assignments." Hollis nodded. "Fair. Here's what I can promise. You do Norfolk, you do it well, and you'll have your choice of assignments after. DevGru support, NCIS liaison, teaching at the schoolhouse, whatever you want. And if I burn out, if I can't handle another one after Norfolk, then you tell me and we find something else. No judgment, no career penalty. You've already proven yourself 10 times over." Kira met his eyes. "Why does this matter so much? Why not just use regular NCIS investigators?" Hollis leaned back. "Because regular investigators can't do what you do. They can't integrate, can't disappear into the background, can't maintain cover while living in the environment 24/7. He gestured toward the window, toward West Ridge visible in the distance. "What you did there, that was art. That was operational discipline at the highest level. And it's a skill set the Navy desperately needs. Not just for theft investigations, for counterintelligence, for force protection, for keeping our people safe. You're asking me to become a specialist in this. I'm asking you to consider it. You're good at it. Maybe the best I've ever seen. And in a world where our enemies are getting smarter, where insider threats are increasing, we need people like you." Kira drank her coffee, thinking. 3 weeks prep for Norfolk. Yes. And I get full operational control, no interference from the local command. Full control. You report to me and Commander Mitchell, nobody else. What's the threat assessment? Similar to West Ridge, but potentially worse. Norfolk's a major hub, more equipment, more personnel, more opportunity for corruption. If there's a leak there, it's feeding a bigger network. Kira processed that. "Okay, I'll do it, but on one condition, which is Dylan Mercer. I want him protected, career-wise. He took a massive risk. I don't want him punished for it." Hollis smiled. "Already handled. Mercer's getting a commendation. He's also being offered a position with NCIS as a forensic analyst. Turns out he's got a talent for digging through financial records." "Good. Anything else?" Kira hesitated. Then, "Yeah, one more thing. When this is over, Norfolk, I want to go back to Afghanistan, back to Hammerhead, just to see it, to remember." Hollis's expression softened. I can arrange that. Why? Because that's where I learned I could stand alone, where I learned that fear doesn't have to stop you, that you can do impossible things if we here refuse to quit. She looked at Hollis. I need to remember that. Before I walk into another 6 weeks of isolation, I need to remember why I'm capable of this. You're capable because of who you are, Kira, not because of what happened in Afghanistan. Maybe, but it helps to remember the proof. Hollis nodded. Then we'll make it happen. After Norfolk, after you close another case and save more lives, we'll get you back to Hammerhead. They finished their coffee in comfortable silence. Outside San Diego, traffic rolled past, civilians going about their lives, unaware that two people in a small cafe were planning operations that would protect equipment worth millions, that would prevent American service members from dying because their gear was compromised. Small moments, quiet decisions. That's what security looked like. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just professional operators making choices that kept people safe. Kira paid the bill, stood. 3 weeks, Master Chief. I'll be ready. I know you will. They shook hands. Hollis held on for an extra moment. You're doing something important, Lieutenant. Don't forget that. Even when it's hard, even when you're alone, you are saving lives. I'll try to remember. And if you ever need to talk, if the isolation gets too heavy, you call me, day or night. I've been where you're going. I know what it costs. Kira nodded, grateful. She walked out into the California sunshine. 3 weeks until Norfolk. 3 weeks to prepare mentally, to steel herself for another round of isolation and deception. But she was ready, because silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn was about to prove it again. 6 months later, the verdicts came down. Chief Victor Kane, 15 years federal prison, theft of government property, conspiracy, trafficking and stolen military equipment. The judge cited his abusive position and betrayal of trust as aggravating factors. No parole eligibility for 12 years. Lieutenant Commander Blake Sutton, 12 years. Same charges. Recommended for dishonorable discharge. His naval pension forfeited. His name added to the national database of corrupt officials. Marcus Webb, the arms dealer who'd purchased the stolen equipment, 22 years. His network dismantled across 3 states. Federal agents recovered equipment valued at $3.8 million from his warehouses. Night vision devices that would protect soldiers on night raids. Encrypted radios that would save lives in contested zones. Tactical optics that would give American forces the edge they needed. Equipment that would never end up in enemy hands because one woman had spent 6 weeks in silence. The trial had been swift. Dylan Mercer's files provided the financial backbone. Kira's surveillance recordings gave prosecutors the conversations. The physical evidence from Warehouse 7 sealed every remaining gap. Kane's defense attorney tried to argue duress, tried to paint his client as a grieving father, driven to desperation by a corrupt system. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. At West Ridge, things changed. They renamed the junior officers' barracks after her, Vaughn Hall. A plaque outside the entrance read, "Dedicated to Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn, whose courage and integrity in the face of injustice exemplified the highest standards of naval service." Captain James Brennan remained in command, but barely. He'd been reprimanded for failure to verify, counseled on due diligence. His fitness report that year contained words like learning opportunity and character growth through adversity. But he learned. 6 months later, when another accusation surfaced against the junior officer, Brennan spent 3 days verifying before taking action. The accusation turned out to be false. The junior officer's career was saved. That officer would never know that Kira Vaughn had changed how West Ridge handled justice. But Brennan knew, and that was enough. Private Bryn Caldwell, the young recruit who'd watched it all unfold that morning, graduated top of her class 18 months later. At her commissioning ceremony, when asked about her inspiration to serve, she told the story. About the lieutenant who got expelled at dawn and returned on a Blackhawk at noon. About how integrity looked like silence until it became thunder. Years later, as a lieutenant herself, Caldwell would tell that story to her own recruits. The legend would grow, details would shift. But the core remained, a woman who stood alone, who let herself be destroyed, who came back stronger. That was the real lesson of West Ridge. Not the arrests, not the convictions, not the recovered millions. The lesson was that sometimes the system needs someone willing to be ground up by it in order to prove it still works. Dylan Mercer thrived at NCIS. His forensic analysis skills helped crack 2 more theft rings across the fleet. Major cases. One at Naval Station Norfolk, though that's another story. One at Naval Base San Diego. He kept a photo on his desk. Lieutenant Vaughn shaking hands with Master Chief Hollis after the trial. Both in dress blues, both looking tired but satisfied. A reminder of what one moment of courage could cost and what it could achieve. Mercer never stopped being grateful that Kira had called him courageous that day in the library. It changed everything. How he saw himself, how he approached his work, how he measured success. Not by what was easy, by what was right. And Master Chief Garrett Hollis. He finally slept through the night, 30 years after Kuwait, 30 years after losing his team to betrayal. He'd stopped it from happening again. Not personally, not directly, but by finding someone better than he'd ever been. By trusting her with the impossible. By believing that the new generation could carry what the old generation had built. That was legacy, not medals, not promotions, not glory, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that somewhere in the world American service members were safer because two people, an old SEAL and a young lieutenant, had done their jobs the way it was supposed to be done, in silence, with discipline, without compromise. That was the real story of West Ridge. Not the expulsion, not the Blackhawk, not even the vindication. The 6 weeks before, the 3 hours during, the lifetime after, all of it mattered, all of it counted. And in a small cafe in Virginia, 3 months into the Norfolk operation, Kira Vaughn would receive a text from an unknown number. Just 4 words. He would be proud. She'd stare at it for a long moment, then understand. Hollis's team, the 7 men who died in Kuwait, the reason he'd become who he was, the reason he'd spent 30 years fighting betrayal from within. They would be proud of what had been accomplished. Kira typed back, so would mine, Master Chief. Her father, the retired Master Chief who'd taught her chess, who'd taught her that patience was controlled aggression, who'd raised her to serve with honor. He was watching, always, and he was proud. That was enough. That would always be enough. She deleted the message, finished her coffee, picked up her notepad, a new one now, but filled with the same kind of observations as the last, and walked back into the silence, where she belonged, where she thrived, where she won. 3 weeks later, Kira stood on the tarmac at Norfolk Naval Station. Virginia humidity thick in the air, different coast, same mission. Her cover was simple. Lieutenant transferring in from San Diego. Administrative assignment, nothing special, nothing that would draw attention. She carried a duffel different from the one at West Ridge, but packed the same way. Essentials, nothing suspicious. Master Chief Hollis had flown out for the insertion, standing beside her now. Gray hair, weathered face, the man who'd trusted her with the impossible. You good? He asked quietly. I'm good. Remember the protocols. 3-hour window if you're burned. We extract no matter what. I remember. And Kira, she looked at Mom, you don't have to prove anything. You've already done that. This is just the job. Stay safe. Stay smart. Come home. She smiled slightly. Yes, Master Chief. He squeezed her shoulder once, then walked away. Kira picked up her duffel, turned toward the admin building. A young ensign approached, clipboard in hand. Lieutenant Vaughn, welcome to Norfolk. Let me show you to your quarters. She followed, just another officer starting a new assignment. But in her pocket was a notepad, pages ready for coordinates, initials, log times, and in her mind was the memory of a fire base in Afghanistan, of 8 hours alone, of 47 lives saved, and the memory of a parade ground in California, of 3 hours of patience, of justice served. She could do this. She would do this. Because somewhere in this base, someone was stealing equipment, selling intel, compromising operations. And Lieutenant Junior Grade Kira Vaughn was about to find them, silent, patient, lethal. The hunt had begun again.